A 10 hut and a happy Breeders' Cup week to you all. Nick Hines reporting along with Joe Moran, Brian DiDonato, Matt O'Connor. And we're here to touch on what hopefully will be an amazing week with Straight No Chaser trying to become the fourth to go in winning twice the Breeders' Cup Sprint and successive seasons, looking back the likes of Midnight Loot, Roy H., Elite Power, and of course, Seismic Beauty, going to try to tip off the Breeders' Cup distaff on what looks to be an amazing weekend. But first things first, I want to introduce the gentleman here. Of course, Joe, you've had an opportunity to kind of take it all in this week. And I know we've got an exciting first-time starter coming up on Thursday with Raging Inferno at Del Mar, and a weekend that will culminate with a new addition to Team MyRacehorse and Bacio.
Yeah, it's been a great week so far. Everyone, most importantly, shipped down in good order. Everyone's taken to the track well and mentally seem to be in good order. So just kind of, it's the final stages where it's more bubble wrap and just try to get everyone into the starting gate this weekend. And so far, everything has gone well. So we've had a bunch of schoolers. Raging Inferno schooled for the first time today in preparation for tomorrow. Straight No Chaser is schooled twice. Seismic Beauty only schooled once on Tuesday. I would kind of expect Straight No Chaser and Seismic to possibly school during the races tomorrow on Thursday, as Friday they will not allow schoolers being Breeders' Cup Day. But that will kind of be their final opportunity. But very happy with the way everyone's coming in.
Yeah, you couldn't get better weather anticipated for Breeders' Cup World Championships, which has been kind of the tone that we've been able to take in. The sunshine tax here in California goes without saying. But,
Yeah.
Considering 2 days of championship racing, which will begin on Friday, a total of 14 races, this being the 42nd edition of the Breeders' Cup World Championship. So let's get into that first-time starter. Raging Inferno, trained by Dan Blacker. Dan doing such a tremendous job with Straight No Chaser. And of course, this will be his curtain call as he will head to the breeding shed at WinStar Farm. So perhaps we can start another chapter by way of Raging Inferno, a horse that was purchased at Fasig, Maryland, at Timonium for $170,000 in a partnership with Alcatraz Racing. And Joe, you've had a first up and front row seat in watching this horse develop to his debut as a son of the freshman sire Raging Bull.
Yeah, he's been a horse that we were obviously all fond of at the sale, and he's a big, powerful bodied horse. I think we always knew when we bought him, even though he breezed well on that off track at Fasig that year with the rain, that turf was probably going to be the likelihood for this horse. And I think the game changer was when he made that move from the dirt in his early works to the all weather Tapeta at Santa Anita. You saw a major step up in his work. So I think it was always going to be a test versus the workmates he was working with. Now the competition. He is the lone first-time starter in the field, and there's a few that are talented. A few of them in there, for example, Honey's Choice. I know that was one that was highly regarded on the work tab going into that horse's debut. Hasn't quite lived up to expectations, but has run two solid races, so that horse naturally has an advantage on us. But I think in regards to our horse, he's coming into the race fit to go a mile. Dan seems ultra confident that he's ready to handle that. As I've kind of said in the Facebook Live that we did earlier today during paddock schooling, it's a challenge. Anytime a horse, especially a 2-year-old, is going to take on all horses that have experience, and now we're going to run a mile on debut, it's not an easy task. So by no means are we going expecting that he's the winner in this race. But I do think it's an indication that he's 9-2 on the morning line. Uh, Clearly, their job is to take an account my racehorse into play of what his odds are going
Sure.
to be. But at the same time, we did get Juan Hernandez, and I think there's a lot of signs going for us that this horse has plenty of ability.
Yeah, interesting side note that his damn great hot, she had competed in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint in consecutive seasons back in 2011, 2012, went on a career that amassed in excess of 594,000 in purses. One sibling from 5 starters did win on debut, so that bodes well. But Matt, as a former trainer, clearly a first-time starter, you kind of go in with great anticipation, but yet at the same time, knowing that the difficulty of winning with a first-timer. Get into the mind of Dan Blacker debuting this horse long on the grass first time out. What do you think was involved in that particular process as opposed to, say, sprinting on the turf.
Yeah, if you were in Dan's shoes, I think the horse in and out. You're with him every day. His physical attributes, and those physical attributes often convert into figuring out whether a horse is a dirt sprinter, a turf sprinter, wants to go 2 turns or whatnot. That being said, it's never easy to win on debut going 2 turns, especially in a field that has a good bit of class in it. Like Joe said, Honey's Choice. That was one who was third on debut. That race ended up producing the winner of the Zuma Beach, which is a grade 3 out there. And another one highlight coming out of what has ended up being a key race in Saratoga is the 8 green screen. Stretching out for the first time. He's out of a mare that was a stake winner around 2 turns on the grass. And out of that Saratoga race, he was 4th. The winner Atfield came back, was 3rd in the grade 3 futurity. And the runner-up in that race was Schwarzenegger, who came back, won the Indian Summer, and is in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint.
That's an outstanding key race to relegate back to. And then you look at the likes of Brigante in the field for trainer Doug O'Neill. He's had some turf experience. He has yet to go the 2 turns. He's certainly bred to get it out of that AP Indy mare, Cheeky Charm. But clearly this is a competitive race. Brian, as a handicapper, you've been quite fortunate to score a few tickets through the years. We know the MyRacehorse effect as it comes to the parimutuel aspects of things. The win wager is not necessarily the best bet when it comes to MyRacehorse because these horses are undervalued. So as you take a look, and of course Del Mar with the low takeout in their pick 5s, this race, race 3 on Thursday, will go off at approximately 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 here on the left coast. Is Raging Inferno a horse that you would consider using? Obviously, looking at Dan Blacker, he's very capable of the first-time starter, and having an opportunity to get to know this horse by way of not only the 2-year-old training sale, but watching his workouts, would he be a horse that you would include in your wagering, in your pick 5?
For sure. I think, like we've kind of said, it's maybe not, there are some horses that have solid form. I don't think it's, for a Breeders' Cup Week race, not the toughest maiden race you'll ever see. I do think there's not a ton of pace. I would assume that Brigante will probably show speed. His debut when he ran 2nd to Hey Nay Nay, who's also running one of the Breeders' Cup races. He's in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, was pretty strong. He hasn't really stepped forward from there, but he's had 3 stakes tries in a row since then. So I would think for him to stretch out and get back into the maiden ranks, I'm sure he's going to show speed and be pretty formidable. I think Green Screen is probably the horse to beat. If there was a horse to bet other than Raging Inferno, he might be the one for me. Like Matt said, the dam was successful going long, and there's actually a full brother to this horse that ran 4th on debut turf sprinting, and then stretched out to the same distance at Del Mar and just missed to a pretty good stakes horse. So on pedigree, I would think that horse is pretty live and should also show some speed.
Well, again, an 8-horse field for the moment. Clearly, with the breaking news of Sovereignty defecting out of the Breeders' Cup Classic. And Joe, I just want to get your final thoughts on Raging Inferno. Clearly buying a horse in May, purchasing a horse out of a 2-year-old training sale, especially one that we felt would get better with age, developing into a 3-year-old. Essentially, let's hope this is the tip of the iceberg. So how much emphasis is there on this debut? Clearly, if he runs 4th, beaten 5 lengths, and he shows some speed and gets a little tired, are we going to walk away dejected, or are we going to be optimistic this is a horse that's clearly going to move forward off of one race?
No, I think this is a horse that's definitely, you're going to play the come line, and he's going to continue to develop. I mean, I think it's an accomplishment in its own right. When we go to these 2-year-old sales, I feel our record in general at 2-year-olds making it to the races this year, it's been our best year in MyRacehorse's career of having 2-year-old starters. I mean, there is a reason only 25% of 2-year-olds make it in their 2-year-old season. And it's been quite a year for us, I would say. So I think that's an accomplishment. He's been able to handle everything out of the sale. And the only thing I wanted to touch on, just when you asked Matt about the sprint to route question and what goes into that decision, given the time of year that we're at right now, being that he was ready at Del Mar there's a big difference between Del Mar turf sprints and Santa Anita turf sprints. Del Mar turf sprints is 5/8 of a mile, and those races are very quick pace races. Most of the time, they're one out of the gate and position, and you really have to have that early speed. So that was really the major factor that went into Dan's decision to say, hey, let's not even prepare him to sprint. Let's have him ready to route. Now, if we were at Santa Anita and we could run him 6 furlongs, I think it would be a whole different story. And we
Right.
would kind of be having that classic preparation of a sprint or 2 sprints to a route like we see with a few in this race.
Well, it's a wonderful thing that we do get leading rider here in Southern California, Juan Hernandez. Juan, of course, will be our pilot aboard Seismic Beauty. Juan, it's interesting to note for a rider that wins at the rate that he does, not really having that many opportunities on the big stage. Clearly across the board, it does feel as if Seismic Beauty is going to be his best chance to win over on Breeders' Cup Championship Saturday. Of course, Future Stars Friday will consist of the 2-year-olds, and Bacio, as we had mentioned, we'll get to in a moment. He did draw in for a race on Sunday. We'll touch on him in just a moment. He was pre-entered, of course, for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf for Friday, but does not feel as if he's going to get in. All right, let's move forward to Breeders' Cup Classic talk. And frustrating, I'm sure, for many. Sovereignty has ascended to the top of his class, not only as a 3-year-old, but as a potential champion. I mean, this was going to be, perhaps his claim for Horse of the Year, and if there is some sort of a, kind of a wacky winner, there won't be an Arkong unless the Chad Brown Rabbit were, for some reason, to win that particular race. It could throw a chink into that whole armor. But let's talk about the Breeders' Cup Classic. And I want to talk to Brian DiDonato. Brian, with Sovereignty defecting out of this race, 2 things. The wagering, clearly it's going to balance the field. But secondly, how does it affect the flow of the race?
I don't think it dramatically changes anything. I don't think Sovereignty, he was probably maybe going to sit a mid-pack trip. From the flow of the race or the pace, don't think it's a big change. Obviously, it does change the board a little bit. I love Sovereignty. I've been a fan of him. He's probably a horse at 6-5 you were supposed to bet against.
Okay.
This is the type of race that it's hard for me to form a super strong opinion before seeing the board. I think someone could get lost. You really kind of have to play the odds. I thought Forever Young was interesting. Ran a good race in this race last year. I think maybe towards, into the Dubai World Cup, he was a little over the top from a long campaign, a lot of traveling. Came back with an impressive race at his home in Japan. Now comes over. His trainer won 2 races in 2021 at Del Mar at the Breeders' Cup. So he was intriguing to me. But, at 6-1 for him versus Sierra Leone at 8-1, obviously their odds will change with the big scratch. But, at those odds, maybe I wouldn't be as interested in him, but I'm kind of hoping Forever Young gets a little lost.
Yeah, could very well get lost in the shuffle, if you will. And, clearly those morning line odds have been adjusted as they stand. Matt O'Connor, obviously you spent the summer in Saratoga on behalf of MyRacehorse. Excellent work yet again, of course, with, trying to accommodate everyone taking it back on stable tours, but you attended the races on a daily basis. And when you look at the Eastern horses, we talk about the likes of Fierceness. We talk about Mind Frame. We consider the likes of a horse that maybe not so many are talking about, Antiquarian. How do they stand up in regards to the likes of, say, a Journalism out west or Forever Young, Nevada Beach, the Upstart, Baisa, for example? What are your thoughts on the Classic, and who's your top pick?
Yeah, so I think Sovereignty stood out in this race. On paper, at least, I'd been high on him all spring. So he was my pick coming into it. Obviously, popped the temperature and is scratched now. Of the other East Coast horses, I think you always have to respect Todd Pletcher coming into a big race. He comes into those races with his horses ready to run. Fierceness, having already had a race out west, defeated Journalism over the track in the Pacific Classic, is kind of a feather in his cap. With that being said, I landed on a horse who I kind of have a love-hate relationship with in Sierra Leone. He's cost me a ton of money when I came off of him. He won the Classic last year. I think that he just has a different gear that a lot of these closers don't have. It looks like there'll be a decent amount of pace. So I'll be keying him on top of Baeza forever young in journalism.
All right, and just a reminder that the Breeders' Cup Classic for television rights has been moved up to race 9, approximate post time 6:25 Eastern, 3:25 here on the left coast. All of the races, all of the Breeders' Cup race on both days can be watched on FanDuel TV. So you don't need to channel change. I know that Peacock also carrying the broadcast, of course, at NBC as well. But stay tuned to FanDuel TV throughout. Joe Moran, it's kind of maybe a little difficult for us out here on the West Coast to be homers, right? Knowing that we've got the likes of Baeza and journalism to maybe hold the gauntlet. You've got 2 3-year-olds, which incidentally 3-year-olds have done fairly well in a Breeders' Cup Classic, regardless of the consensus. Are these 2 horses that perhaps stand up to the likes of Fierceness, Sierra Leone, and Mindframe, and Antiquarian, or are they going to be up against it?
I personally think they're going to be up against it. I think they've looked tremendous. Both these horses in particular have looked tremendous this week on the track. I mean, journalism has looked like that his entire career, whether it was Santa Anita Del Mar. He's always looked the part. He's always moved well. Same with Baeza. I mean, it's pretty interesting. That horse carries a decent amount of weight for a horse that has kind of been on the campaign that he's been on. And it's not like he's been out of training by any means. But he looks great in the flesh. Personally, I think Baeza is up against it a little bit, even though we are all, I would say, kind of have a rooting interest in him, just being a brother to Puka 24. So, I mean, I will be rooting for him, but I do think this is a tough task. And the same thing for journalism. I just look at the Pacific Classic and say, for Fierceness to overcome what he did in that race, how is journalism going to turn the tables on him? And I personally just don't see it. I'm kind of on the Fierceness train. I think, I don't know, when I look at the pace of this race, I know there's a few horses that could contest the pace and kind of shake things up. But I think Fierceness showed he doesn't need the lead. He's going to be close. He's proven on the track. He's run great twice here. I can't disregard Sierra Leone. He's the defending champ. And Antiquarium, I think is very intriguing. But I think the one lost one that's kind of not being talked about is Mindframe. I mean, I do think it's tough that he did drop the rider and doesn't really have a true prep coming into this race. And this is not his ideal distance. So I know that is a concern. But he's looked tremendous. I mean, his only loss at this distance was in the Belmont to Dornoch. And there's certainly no disrespect in that. So he's an interesting one at a price for me. He's drawn well. He's got tactical speed. So he could sit a great trip.
Top choice?
Fierceness.
All right, Joe Moran with Fierceness, and Brian Didinato. Is this a race that you think Forever Young you're going to get that 6-1 price? Do you think he'll be likely say 4-1? I mean, he's become a fan favorite. Let's not kid ourselves.
I'm hoping he goes off at decent odds. There's just so many formidable American horses. Obviously, the money usually comes in on these Japanese horses, but I mean, I just have a hard time seeing him going off at shorter odds than the defending champ and a couple of these other big name American horses. So I'm hopeful, but we'll see. If he's 4-1, I probably won't bet him.
All right, I'm going to side with Matt O'Connor, Sierra Leone. Going to try and become the first back-to-back or dual winner, if you will, of the Breeders' Cup Classic since Tis Now for America, dating back to 2001. And interesting to note, we didn't even mention not a whole lot with Nevada Beach, Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert, the winningest of the Breeders' Cup Classic. But that son of Omaha Beach, he is a 3-year-old. He's lightly raced. He'll likely have to run the race of his life, but he certainly has stepped up into the right direction. And he did beat Full Serrano, who was the upset winner of the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile last year. All right. Again, our thoughts and our hopes that we'll see Sovereignty for a campaign in 2026 as he defects out of this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. All right, we move on to the key races of the weekend. And, of course, Straight No Chaser trying to become the fourth horse, to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint in succession. So it's not without possibility. You date it back to Midnight Loop, the likes of Roy H., Elite Power in more recent memory. And, it's been an incredible journey with Straight No Chaser, having scouted him as a 2-year-old in training and watching him develop through the years. And, so much credit goes out to Dan Blacker as assistant one, his entire team for the work that they've done. But a lot of credit goes out to you, the partners as well, with MyRacehorse, for your patience and always being so supportive and, really not putting us into a stop where we would consider retirement. Not that he ever truly got to that point, but there were some blips on the radar. But here he is, straight no chaser. I was shocked, Joe Moran, to see that this horse is dispatched at 8-1 on the morning line. I mean, what are we thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a common question among the partners that have been out at Del Mar. At the end of the day, he is for choice at 8-1. So
Okay.
I do think it seems higher than it truly is, but it is shocking. I mean, at the end of the day, he is coming off 2 losses, but he's coming off a layoff in that Santa Anita Sprint Championship. For horses that run their first time coming from Dubai, usually they need the race when they come from the Middle East. So, that race did not shock me by any means. He was drawn inside, but it does feel like a slight disrespect, right? The horse that we beat last year is the morning line favorite,
Right.
and we're fourth choice. And it's the same thing. You could say the same thing about Sierra Leone. How is Sierra Leone 8-1? I mean, he's really done nothing wrong
True.
to be dispatched at 8-1. So. I don't know. On Breeders' Cup Day, it's the one day of the year that the MyRacehorse effect, I don't think, plays a factor. There's too much money in the pools. So I don't think we'll change the odds, but it will be very interesting to see where we go off come post time.
Well, Joe, you've had an opportunity since Straight No Chaser arrived to enter the barn of Andrew Lerner, who is the original trainer of Straight No Chaser. And once he retired, coming back off a little bit of a respite, you've seen this horse develop. You've taken a journey with this horse to Saudi Arabia, and clearly we were front row center in last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint in victory and taking home the hardware. Where do you see him today versus, say, earlier in the year, and then even taking it back a year at Del Mar when he won the Breeders' Cup Sprint to take home the championship?
Yeah, well, I see a lot of similarities from last year. I mean, from the moment he got off the van this year for the Breeders' Cup, it kind of felt like deja vu of him last year. He might have been even a little more amped up this year, but he was the same way. He's kind of got the same routine, and he thinks he's King Kong. I mean, he truly thinks he's the man. And I always say, in my opinion, the good horses know they're good horses, and he certainly has that trait about him. But this horse, I mean, he's just developed into a specimen. I mean, we always talk about, and we spent a lot of time with Liam O'Rourke from Windstar, who's been in town. And we think the key for him and his next career at stud is just getting him in front of people. If we can just showcase the animal that he's become, he's going to sell himself to the people. But, you have a horse that just has so much resilience. Dan uses that word a lot to describe him. And I think it's true. I mean, he's had quite a journey throughout his career. He's had some minor blips that you mentioned that have caused us to be patient on multiple occasions, but he's overcome everything. I mean, he's a champion for a reason. And it's amazing that he gets to defend his title. It's an accomplishment in its own right. But I hope for the horse and for all the partners and us, of course, it would be something special if he could repeat and defend his title.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. Thorough manager, they'll list the weight on horses. And when he had won the Santa Anita Sprint Championship last year, he weighed in at 1,097. This year, he weighed in at 1,098. So that really speaks to the volume of, care and condition, and truly an athlete. And, this horse is, in my mind, gotten better like fine wine year in, year out. Based on rags and sheets, he ran a 7, which the closer to 0, the faster you run. As an example, the horse that took advantage of what I thought was that hot pace, that internal fraction last out. I mean, clearly going 22-3 and 22-3 that second quarter. Imagination ran a 3 3/4, but Matt can touch on that sheet number. Likely this horse is going to bounce to the moon. And Ben Tornado, his return effort, that was his first start since the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year in return. And he ran a 4 on the rags and sheets. So there's a chance that he potentially could bounce. And on a side note, Ben Tornado was reported to have bled in last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint. So he looks fantastic, and I think he's the horse to beat. All right, Matt, as you have kind of handicapped this race, clearly we know where our sentiments are. Copion was an intriguing entrant. She drew the rail, clearly up against it. Who are a couple of the horses that you fear the most in this year's Side Games Breeders' Cup Sprint?
I think we could all agree that on paper right now, if we had to pick one to beat, it would be the runner-up from last year, Ben Tornado. As you said, ran what was the best race of his life off a 315-day layoff. Could bounce off that number. He does have pretty adequate spacing between that start and the Breeders' Cup where he could step forward. And if he does, that'll make him dangerous. I'd say the one positive for us is that we're drawn outside of him. Obviously, Straight No Chaser is a horse who'd rather be outside horses than inside and in the clear. One other horse who I don't really fear him as a threat to win, but I think he could kind of throw a wrench in things is the 13 Madhouse. He'll be one of the longest shots on the board, I would think. He seems to be quick enough to pester both Ben Tornado and us on the lead, and he may make us go a little bit faster than we wanted early. But obviously, when the gates open, if one horse breaks a step slow or one out breaks the other, everything could change. But obviously, we're coming in. We know we needed the race, Straight No Chaser. That is, we know we needed that race coming back from Dubai, and we're looking for a step forward from him. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I think the pace is clearly projected to be hot. It is kind of also an interesting side note that Mulligan, who is drawn just inside Straight No Chaser, Windstar owned, he'll be heading to the breeding shed at the same time. So they're going to be friends there at Windstar, Son of Violence. And you go back to that Breeders' Cup Sprint last year, and this is a horse that generally would show big speed. And in last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint, they took him back. I don't think he broke all that well, but the stablemate or the uncoupled entry mate, Federal Judge, he was the one that was dictating some terms. So you bring up Madhouse. He certainly could kind of scramble things early, but we've seen it with Straight No Chaser that he can sit the trip. He doesn't necessarily have to go get him early. It's just a matter of him getting comfortable and playing his role tactically. I think Dr. Venkman, despite the fact that there's in just one time in 33 years of the Breeders' Cup Sprint, you've had a horse that won this race who hadn't earned a century mark Beyer speed figure. Dr. Venkman, and Joe knows this horse very well, as of course spending a lot of time with our trainer Mark Glatt. This horse, in his last 4 starts, he's drawn the rail 3 of those 4, including 2 of 9 3-back. But he loves Del Mar. And Joe, does Dr. Venkman, would he be a nice compliment to Straight No Chaser, or do you think he's up against it from a class perspective? I don't think he is. 15-1 looks mighty juicy.
Yeah, I don't think it's the class standpoint. I guess the biggest thing that surprised me in Mark's decision is that I just question if 6 furlongs is the perfect match for him. But at the same time, I don't know if a mile was a perfect match for him either. So, that 7/8 is kind of his sweet spot. Given in this race, he should get a hot pace to run at. He finally gets off the rail. I mean, Mark's been extremely, extremely high on this horse from day one. He did earn a 91 Beyer speed figure in his debut, which is a feat. It's kind of surprising he hasn't got that triple digit speed figure yet, but he's a talented horse. Umbi's rode him the last 2 times and has got to know him. He's done a great job. The one thing I'll say, he tries very hard and he will be running on. Whether it's good enough, we'll find out.
All right. Well, he's going to be on my verticals. I mean, clearly we know the horse is that we're going to key. Brian, looking at the field, as I mentioned, a little surprising that Copion entered here, but she has some very, very fast numbers. She has produced both on Thorograph and Ragozin, not to mention a 110 Beyer speed figure earned in the Santa Monica earlier this year for your Hall of Fame trainer and our trainer, Richard Mandela. Does she stand a chance against the boys in this spot?
Certainly. I'm going to touch on her, but before we get too far, I do want to mention a couple promotions we have with First Bet. So we have a $10 money back promotion. If you bet any MyRacehorse horse, it doesn't have to be a horse that you own. And if they run second or third, you get your bet back up to $10. You just have to make sure when you signed up, you used your same email address that's connected with your MyRacehorse account. Also, we have a code for if you use MRH 200, you'll earn a $200 bonus for every $100 you bet for the first 60 days. So, if you're like loading up your account for the Breeders' Cup, if you're opening up a new account, you might bet a little bit more on the Breeders' Cup than you would normally. It's a great time to do that and use that promotion and kind of get some money back. So just 2 things to think about. And like I said, those are for any horse, any MyRacehorse horse, even if you're not in on it. So, maybe you're not in on a Straight No Chaser, but you think he's got a good shot. Good little promotion there. Back to the race. Obviously, Copion, her best races are super strong. Other than the rail, which probably isn't optimal for her. I'm not sure this distance is great for her.
Right.
Clearly Spendthrift and Mr. Mandela wanted to keep their 2 star fillies separate. And if you ask them, I assume they would say that this is the better horse. But she's never even gone 6 furlongs in her career before. She's won over 6.5. She got beat 2 back at very short odds going 6.5 furlongs. So yeah, I mean, she's another horse that this race does feel a little sharp for, and you could certainly see her getting shuffled back from the rail.
Who's your top pick in this race if you weren't involved with Straight No Chaser?
The one horse I do think at 8-1, especially, I think Straight No Chaser is pretty obvious. And we were all, maybe, I don't want to say holding our breaths, but we really were hoping for a more of an outside post. And now that we've gotten that, I feel really good about him. The one horse I'm a little interested in is number 3, Lovesick Blues. Every form line on his PPs except for 1 does not make him a contender here. Right. But that race 2 back in the grade 1 Bing Crosby at the distance at Del Mar. If we're talking hot pace, if the pace collapses, he ran a 105 buyer in that race. If he can reproduce that effort and gets the pace set up, I mean, that wins this race a decent percentage of the time. So he'd be the one long shot that I'm a little interested in.
He's an interesting sheet horse. Matt, you'll probably have an opportunity to delve a bit more into it, but, based on the number that he earned in the Bing Crosby, they had intended. And Joe, the story on Lovesick Blues, I know that Librado Bacio was getting some guidance from a Hall of Fame trainer, Neil Drysdale. What went behind the thought process with Lovesick Blues using that California flag down the hill sprint as a prep for the Breeders' Cup sprint?
You got me. I did hear the same story as you, but it really didn't make a ton of sense to me outside the fact that the horse is clearly a hill specialist and likes it, and it's a way to prep him. I don't know. This one's a tough one for me. I would find this one very hard to be able to replicate his Bing Crosby effort against this field. I mean, at the end of the day, Hijazi came back to, I believe, lose a allowance race.
Right.
And now we're facing the best sprinters in the country. I don't see it. I could be dead wrong, but I will gladly play against it and be wrong if he wins. But this one would shock me if it happened.
Well, he did beat Dr. Venkman, but I'm still on the Dr. Venkman trip here. I just feel like he likes the track at Del Mar. As far as Price Horse, Matt, before we roll into the Breeders' Cup distaff and to talk Seismic Beauty, are there any bombers in this field that you would consider using with Straight No Chaser?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I think it's the top contenders are pretty obvious.
Okay.
If I had to come up with one, I would say that Brian's love choice in Lovesick Blues kind of makes sense. Just having that win in a grade 1 over the track in what is a key prep for this race.
Pretty remarkable to think what Banishing has done this year. Unfortunately, for the trainer, David Jacobson couldn't get his workman's comp worked out. But $1.6 million Banishing's earned in 2025. But, 6 furlongs, he is perfect at the distance. According to co-owner Larry Roman, this was their target. He's 15-1. This could be a fun race to get involved as far as the exotics are concerned. But go Straight No Chaser. It's been an incredible journey, and let's go out with a bang, my friend. I'm looking forward so much to Saturday's Side Games Breeders' Cup Sprint. All right, let's move on. The distaff, which hopefully we'll be celebrating race 6 on the day with the Breeders' Cup Sprint. It's a quick turnaround to the Breeders' Cup distaff at 1 1/8. Some horses of Christmas past that stand out. Of course, Bacio is one of my favorite of all time, Lafitte Pinkai. Brian Donato, Cavalieri was one key defection out of this race. And, it kind of opened up the playbook knowing that was the other Hall of Fame trainer, Bob Baffert, entrant.
Yeah. I think earlier in the year, Bob obviously had several horses in this division, and we weren't really sure who the standout was. I think clearly since then, Seismic Beauty has obviously emerged as the star in that barn and the star in this race. I have a hard time seeing past her in this race. Obviously, the pace scenario is sort of the one question if she gets really pestered early, but she looks pretty darn good. She's got to be one of the more likely winners of the weekend, I would say.
Joe, you've had an opportunity to watch, as you have with all of our horses, of course, up close and personal. You've seen Seismic Beauty develop, and she's another of those horses that, when you consider her career, it's been all about patience. And I just don't feel as if we've seen the tip of the iceberg, with her yet. I mean, I think we haven't gotten to the apex of her career. I mean, clearly this could be a watershed moment. I understand she won the Clement Hurst. It was a grade 1. It was a great day. She's right at the precipice of $500,000 in earnings. But for her 4-year-old daughter, Uncle Mo, this is a moment for her, I think, to shine. As you've seen her develop in the mornings and in racing, what can you tell us about her, and what do you most anticipate on Saturday?
Yeah, well, she's just got so much class. I mean, nothing phases her. When she schooled on Tuesday, she just walked around there like it was no big deal. I mean, she galloped on the engine this morning. Yesterday, she just floats over this Del Mar track. I think it is one thing that we have said, that she clearly gets over the Del Mar track a little bit better than Santa Anita.
Right.
And she still works very well at Santa Anita, but I think there's a clear difference of the way that she moves along at Del Mar. So, I think the post position, I wasn't quite as worried about it going into the draw, but now we kind of talk more and more about the pace in this race and, what our tactics are going to be. I don't think we can be drawn any better. There's a few horses to our outside that could show a little bit of speed, but at least we're drawn towards the outside. It's going to give Juan the ability to really do whatever he wants. When you do look at her wins, she's on the lead in all 4 of those wins. So to say she has the ability to not be on the lead and win, I truly believe that, but we have not seen that yet. So, at the end of the day, I think you're not going to change her game. She's just so naturally fast, and every time she's been on the lead, she's never had to work for it. So even if she has to work for it, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Philly just seems like she's thriving right now, and the end of the day, I think she's just the class of the field. I know there's been a lot of talk about nitrogen. I think that would be a tough task for a 3-year-old to step up and win a race like this. And
Yeah.
what is she going to do from the rail? She may be forced to show a little more speed than she ever has. I just think everything's gone in our favor in this way, and she's doing great. And I just hope she can prove she's the best horse we think she is.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, clearly Jinjin gave her fits last out. Jinjin is drawn outside of her. Jinjin likes to get involved early, but I think the advantage comes to us with Seismic Beauty as far as the draw. But I also feel that, just based on Bob, and you can touch on this, Joe, what do you think went into his mindset not having an additional prep, say, for example, as maybe some of these other horses did? I mean, clearly going into the starting gate on Saturday, it'll be 3 months between races. Does that concern you at all? And, this has been the plan. And what's the thought process behind what Bob's trying to accomplish?
It's a great question. I think there's a few factors. At the end of the day, Bob's got a big stable, right? And Cavallari won that final prep. And if Bob can have 2 chances in this race, why would he risk running 2 of his best fillies and make them run a harder race going into this? I think it's going to ultimately take more out of both of them and work against him. She's a filly that's always run well fresh. And at the end of the day, I mean, she gets a lot from her works. I mean, she breezes 59 in hand like it's nothing.
Right.
So when you look at her, there's not an ounce of fat on her.
All right. Well, this has been the plan. Matt, as you look at the pace scenario as a handicapper, and I've gone back and forth looking at both Thorograph and Thorough Manager. Joe touched on the fact that maybe she doesn't necessarily need the lead, but we know what the game is as far as our Hall of Fame trainer is concerned. I mean, all 4 of her victories came gate to wire. Does she get the lead here? And how difficult will it be for her to get comfortable in doing so?
As someone who grew up on East Coast racing, I've come to learn that one thing that's ever dangerous is West Coast speed horses. I honestly don't believe anyone in this field's fast enough to keep up with her early. In regard to how the pace will set up, I'd expect Juan to break go and try to put this field behind the 8 ball. I think she breaks, clears, and bottoms out this field.
As we look at the race in its entirety, Brian, who do you fear the most on the paper race?
I'd say maybe Clicquot. Really well-bred, quality road filly, has won her last 4 starts. She won her last race by a neck. Obviously, she's got to step way forward, but she'd be one I'd fear a little bit. The other one, the Argentinian filly, just you have no idea what you have here. I went back and watched a couple of her races. She's a nice moving horse, clearly talented, but I don't know. Will she stack up with a horse like Seismic Beauty? It's hard to imagine, but she's certainly the X factor in the race.
Now, speaking of Sarawak Rim, Ignacio Nacho-Correas, this will be his final starter. He will go into retirement, and certainly one that has paid his dues, an outstanding horseman. Joe, quiz question for you. How many Breeders' Cup distaffs has Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert won?
0.
Ha! You win the prize, my friend. Pretty remarkable to think that, though, right? You would have thought that there had to have been 1 or 2 along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I heard that stat that someone brought it up probably a month or 2 ago, I really couldn't believe it. And I mean, you just think of the good fillies that he's had in his day, but most of them were filly and mare sprint category horses when you think about it. So I I sure hope for our sake this is the one for him. And he sure is confident. From the time we finally got her stretched out, I mean, this was his plan. He always thought she had this type of ability, and now it's game time. So I'm feeling good. It's surprisingly, I'm not too nervous about her. Straight No Chaser being the defending champ, I feel like there's almost more pressure, right? So like I kind of feel a little more nerves there than this one, but I feel pretty good about Seismic Beauty.
Yeah, I'm opposite. I feel that Straight No Chaser, we know what he's capable of, and if he runs his A game, he's certainly going to be right there on the button. Whereas Seismic Beauty, uncharted waters. I mean, it's going to be the toughest race for life. It's supposed to be way, but as you mentioned, she certainly appreciates that racetrack. Matt, any final thoughts on the 2 races in particular before we talk about the recent acquisition for MyRacehorse, and where are you going to be this Saturday?
I'll be watching from Lexington, but I think that both horses are doing super. We got the draws that we wanted, and I think it's all systems go. Like Joe said, it's bubble wrap time now, and we'll get them to the races Saturday in the paddock and in and out of the gate, and then it's in God's hands from there.
Brian?
Yeah, feeling good about it. Obviously, it's super cool that they're back-to-back like that. Just an amazing accomplishment to have 2 horses in the Breeders' Cup with serious chances like this. We've been really lucky the last few years, and this is just another example of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Tribute to hard work and dedication, and of course our chief Michael Behrens, and the partners. I can't say enough for the partners. Been so supportive. Win, lose, or draw. Even when these horses go out, they don't quite perform as we may anticipate. The fact they come home safe and sound. This is a patience game, and if you play your cards right, like high stakes poker, you certainly will get paid out in the end if you're fortunate. So let's hope that Saturday turns out to be a superstar Saturday. I'll be saluting from the grandstand, and it's going to be a fun one. I am very much looking forward to it. Well, let's jump into our newest acquisition, Bacio, and it's official that he has entered for Sunday at Del Mar. It's a field of 7. He will go into race 5. We don't have the draw yet, but Juan Hernandez for trainer Wesley Ward. Brian, tell us about Bacio.
Son of McLean's Music was actually a horse that was on our radar at OBS March earlier this year. Worked very quickly there. It was just kind of one that slipped through the cracks. No one ended up buying him. That's a tricky sale. First sale of the year. Horses do sometimes get missed, and I think it's fair to say he was one of those. The group that bred him went on to race him, gave him to Wesley Ward. Romped first out on the dirt at Monmouth Park. Wesley does seem to favor the turf with most of his speedy horses. Sent him over to California, ran a bang-up race to be second in a stake there. And, he's a very exciting horse. I think it's interesting that the ownership group all kind of stayed in. They obviously took some money off the table for us to buy in, but, they seem to have confidence in him, and he's just an exciting horse to add to the stable.
Yeah, having an opportunity to see him there at Santa Anita upon purchasing him, he just seems like kind of a laid-back horse. But Joe, Matt, we circled back on this horse a few times at the sale, so it's kind of ironic. Fast forward, here we are with Bacio, who is now in the stable of MyRacehorse. I think it's exciting.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. All right. So obviously Bacio, one that we liked at OBS, and obviously we didn't land him there. We had to pay a bit of a premium to get into him now. But for a 2-year-old to win how he did first time out, ship across the country, run second, just missing a stake. I think he paired up 11 rags for both of those efforts. So it just speaks to the kind of quality that we think and hope that he is.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, it's a horse, I think, for the MyRacehorse plan when we go to buy horses, I don't want to call him one-dimensional because I think as we've seen him develop, I don't think that's the case. But when we go to acquire horses out of a sale, usually sprinter types aren't our focus most of the time. And I think that was the determining factor of why we didn't pull the trigger on him there. But it was a horse that I know in particular we went back twice to circle back on late and just say, should we pull the trigger because we really liked him. I think it's intriguing. Later than planned that beat him comes back to run in the Breeders' Cup on Friday. So, have a rooting interest there. It'll be interesting to see that one. I believe he's stretching back out, though, if I'm not mistaken, to the mile versus the sprint. But a son of Kotai Glory there, who obviously that sire's had a lot of success in America. But, he just seems like a horse that's going to be a nice splash horse right off the bat and bring us some stakes opportunities. And, obviously we're pointing for an allowance race on Sunday, but hopefully that's just a start to plenty more next year in his 3-year-old season.
And I think it's exciting. He's also eligible for the ship and win as well. So a little bonus on top of that purse that you'll see on your program. So that'll be race 5 at Del Mar, which hopefully will be the back end of what could be a most remarkable, memorable weekend for us here at MyRacehorse, and of course Raging Inferno. Going to get things started on Thursday down at the Seaside Oval for trainer Dan Blacker. Gentlemen, any final thoughts, Brian, on the Breeders' Cup and what you're anticipating this weekend?
Oh, good luck, everyone. It doesn't get more exciting than this, so have fun with it.
Joe?
Just wanted to add Straight No Chaser will school in the 3rd race at Del Mar tomorrow. So that means right when the 2nd race ends, he'll already be in the paddock. So once, horses for race 2 go to the track and they get a little close to post time, that's when he'll kind of walk in there. So for owners, if you want to get outside the paddock and get a close view of him schooling, feel free to do so. He'll also train 6:30. He's going to gallop plus go to the gate in school. So that's kind of been same exact routine as he did last year. So jog day 1, gallop, and then gallop and gate school, and then he'll likely jog into the race. So just wanted to keep everyone in the loop there.
Sounds like an exciting Thursday indeed. And Matt O'Connor, certainly appreciate your insight from a trainer's perspective when you kind of look at the development of horses, and clearly with the Raging Infernos and the Bacios, the 2-year-olds, it's the old saying, life is like a box of chocolates, so are horses. But any final thoughts on Breeders' Cup Championship weekend?
Just enjoy it. It's hard to get horses to compete in these graded stake races, let alone at the grade 1 level with 2 live shots in the Breeders' Cup. So just take it all in, and hopefully we have some luck and we're back here next year with titles to defend.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us on behalf of Joe Moran, Matt O'Connor, Brian DiDonato, Nick Hines saying hopefully we'll be seeing you in the winner's circle very soon. Hopefully it'll be a big Saturday, a super Saturday. we'll see you out there. And if you're not able to make it, a reminder, you can catch all the racing on FanDuel TV. Enjoy, safe travels to our champions, and we'll see you next time.